Dude, today's show was awesome. Did not go in the direction I thought it would go,
Nope.
but I tell you, I as a constant learner and trying to be open-minded, man, I absolutely loved Jeff Evans and just the lessons that he taught us today.
Yeah, man. I mean, uh, climbing mountains, leading blind men up mountains, serving veterans, taking veterans on expeditions and retreats. We're talking about servant leadership, the Sherpa attitude, the expeditionary mindset, lessons learned, and how to raise kids in an environment, this VUCA world that we're living in. You don't know what VUCA is? Stand by. You'll learn about it. The show is awesome. Go listen.
You're listening to Filling the Storehouse podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Stuart. We want to walk with you on the journey to living the abundant life through faith, family, and freedom. Our goal is to refine our why while helping you find yours. Together, achieve our best and highest purpose. In the end, we'll drive each other to intentionally fill our storehouse.
All right. So before we hit record here, we were talking about men crying and, kids leaving the house and, eating mushrooms in our bars and growing those. Like we could go in so many different directions today. So this could be a fun conversation. Jeff, I'm excited to have this conversation, man. Thanks for showing up today and being a part of Filling the Storehouse podcast.
Yeah. So thank y'all for having me. It's funny. I think it's worth saying like how we stepped into it.
Yeah.
Both David and Stu are like, yeah, let's we can talk about leadership, we can talk about teamwork, and all those topics are great, and I love them all. But let me just tell you how my morning's been so far, which has been full of, then that's how we got to crying and mushrooms and kids leaving and stuff. So, so that was a good segue. I grow my own mushrooms, just small little amounts, and I grow them from spores, and I love the process. And then when they're all finished months later, just this morning, that's why it's so fresh in my mind. I ground them down, and then I mix them with caramels, and I cut them into little bitty pieces, and I give them to my friends, many of which are ex-mill guys and gals, because I think that a lot of people are familiar with the data now, the anecdotal data and real data that shows that psilocybin on its own is such a great instrument and tool for everyone, but specifically with folks that have experienced some mental health issues, which I think all of us probably have some tinge of it, if not some profound nature of certain processes, and life experiences will, I think, lead to that quite a bit, and for a lot of cases. And so I think that what I've discovered, at least anecdotally, is that little microdoses, or even in some cases doing a true guided professional sitter high dose experiences can really sort of reset folks and give them a hard stop, and then the opportunity to sort of build fresh. And I'm a big advocate of it, and that's what really the impetus for me in growing my own, just so I could give them to some of my friends who I felt like really could benefit from it. That's how my morning's been going.
That's super interesting, man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it's a world, at least for me, I don't want to speak for Stu, that I am completely ignorant to, because of
Same.
We've been in the military for 20 years, and that's just not a part of the thing. But I'll tell you, my interest has been piqued in the pain, the pain relieving features of when they talk about THC or cannabis or whatever, CBD, all this stuff. Like, I don't even understand it fully, but being a military guy of 20 years, we're looking at 11 plus orthopedic surgeries, a lot of pain, chronic pain every day. Stu and I are talking, I just put a screen in this office because I'm like, man, my neck, and there's popping and there's issues. And I have actually been very interested recently just in trying to understand more fully options, because, man, pain it is not a fun thing just to continuously have every single day. Like, it has, you talk about mental mental health, there is a very true mental health. It's I think detrimental to mental health to be in pain constantly. So I've actually been very curious about, just the options that are out there, because, the standard military issues, 800 milligram Motrin and maybe some pain pills. And that's just not, we've seen where that goes.
Well, yeah. And this is exactly the conversation I was having with one of my very, very close buddy, who was a Dev Group guy back in the day. Mark Ozdarski is his name. And he always says he's the Brett Favre of Team 6, because he was like, he retired and they're like, oh, come back. And so he continuously just goes back and does these like one-off missions, and now he's in the private sector. But I had this conversation exactly like this with him, David, where he was like, listen, I don't know about this stuff because it hasn't just been a part of my universe for 20 plus years. But I'm curious, because he's, just like you were saying, has heard that there is strong data-driven evidence and anecdotal evidence of individuals who have basically, let's just continue to use your experiences, have had their asses kicked physically and emotionally for a couple decades, and you're like enriched plutonium, and you come out, and now let's pull the fuse out, and then good luck, you're good, right? So how do you
the VA will take care of you. Just as a side note for our listeners out there, Stu and I have been retired since May. It is now September 27th, and neither one of us has even received our rating back. So I just want to put that into context.
Yeah, I mean, so you got to need to take things into your own hands, right? To a large degree, really, for your own physical and mental health. And David, you made a really good point about the physical manifestations of pain, then absolutely being a catalyst, if not the fertile ground for which mental health can then become greatly impacted. And these are all that's just the algorithm that takes place, right? And you guys are prime examples of that. And I know a lot of guys personally in the same boat. And that's one of the reasons that led me to sort of do my own research and figure out, what is it that at least be a catalyst for change? Because what I was seeing let me back up a little bit. The blind guy that I've been guiding for years, his name's Eric Weinmeyer. I've been guiding him for, we're going on, over 25 years now. And we climbed Everest together, and we've done a bunch of big, expeditions and races, and all the 7 summits, the highest point of the 7 continents, and done a bunch of stuff together. And when we were just fixing to celebrate our 10-year anniversary of summiting Everest, we knew that we wanted to do something that was in a way to celebrate, but also something that was bigger than us. And neither one of us served, but both of us have a strong affinity for the community. And I say the community because I think that's an important part of how I like to think of it. It is a community. And both of us are very well connected to a certain extent to, active duty and recently retired. And we decided, we landed on that. Like, let's do something where we can basically say thank you, and also share this meaningful place of the big mountains of the world and what we've learned there, and how there's such transferable lessons there. So, for instance, you're in the big mountains, you've got to train up, you've got to prepare, you've got to establish what the mission looks like, you have to establish parameters, success, failure, when to say we're squared away, we're good, we've done what we came to do. What it feels like to be on a rope team and be a part of something that's bigger than you, where you have to pay attention to the tension of the rope. You can't just plug in and just be like, I'm sweet, I'm squared away. Like, you have to You have to look forward, you have to look back and make sure like the tension of the rope. There's just all these great metaphors that are baked into mountaineering. It's scary as hell. It's intense. It's overwhelming. But in the end, when the mission is achieved, hopefully, maybe the mission is achieved, there's this amazing sense that comes from an individual and group perspective that I don't feel like you can replicate in many different ways. So we started a program originally called Soldiers to Summits, and then we realized we wanted to be a little bit more inclusive, so we called it No Barriers Warriors. So it wasn't.
I was gonna say, man, soldiers is very cuts out all the good services.
We heard this. we heard this, and this was our issue. So we're like, yeah, let's forget the soldiers part. So yeah, so it's No Barriers Warriors, and so we have taken veterans from all walks of life and all branches and all levels of service with different physical, emotional traumas that they've experienced that have impacted them significantly, and taking them on big mountain climbs around the world, but also then doing a lot of domestic trips, and then even like, floating the Grand Canyon and stuff. But the whole point is creating camaraderie, creating a mission-oriented experience, creating a train-up experience, creating adversity and how we manage it, and all these different components. So it continues today, and that's as a result, I've become very, very close with a lot of guys and gals over the years, Aaron Hale included, which is how the three of us got connected.
Well, and you took him like up a mountain, right? Like, so our buddy Aaron, he's blind, and you are taking blind service members, veterans, up these like huge mountains. You're going to take them up Kilimanjaro and something changed, but you're taking guys up Everest. Like, it's pretty rad, dude.
Well, so for context, Aaron was not born blind. He was a service member, EOD, was blown up, lost his eyesight, hearing. So this was not like this was not something he was accustomed to or grew up, with as a blind man. This was something that was traumatic, immediate, and life-changing. So, I
love that dude. Huge. That dude is so amazing because he got blown up, lost his vision. Okay, that's pretty bad. You're like, fuck, man. Like, he could have just tapped out right there. No, happiest, solid dude. Wants to climb Kilimanjaro. I get connected with him. We go do a training trip. We go. What did we do? I think we did some 14ers. We had 3 14ers in a day or something. Like, really just charged pretty hard. And then he got exposed to some microbial, it wasn't E. coli, but it was a staph sort of infection that went into his ear canals and caused him to basically go deaf.
Yeah.
Still, that son of a bitch was like, what's up? And like ready to party and have fun and charge into life. And so he created this confectionery. He's an amazing cook.
Fudge, man. Fudge
and
delicious.
Confectionaries. Like the dude, and I tell him, I was like, I need to see more content from you because he is so compelling. He's such a beautiful, wonderful human being who chose not to lay down after getting his ass kicked. Oh, and then he got his ass kicked again. And he's like, still, I'm going to stand up and charge. I have so much respect for that man. Incredible human being. So I think the reason I started telling that story is because I have guys like Oz in my life, who is like, same thing that you said, I don't know how these things work. Tell me, what is it like? Let's hear about it. And so I've made it a little bit of my mission to seek out how to grow these things. I've been turning people on to a book that I think is a bit of a game changer for a lot of people. It's written by a guy named Michael Pollan, Pollan, and the book is called How to Change Your Mind. And that Netflix made a series about it. It just came out. Don't watch the Netflix series. It's good, but it's a little diluted. Read the book. The book is fantastic, How to Change Your Mind. And it talks about basically microdosing, and a lot of the nuances that come from, and the biochemistry that comes from these psychoactive medicines that can really put a hard stop on this hamster wheel of bullshit that sort of happens to so many of us. And you stop it. And then you basically, it's this circuit that just goes inside us, and let's stop it. And then let's go from there and sort of, reclaim this newer path. And then as a result, a lot of your biochemistry gets altered and changed in a positive way. And there's this residual effect that takes place. So you guys caught me on a morning when I was just doing all this. So of course my mind is like spinning with this. I'm like, oh, hey guys, by the way.
So, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, and also I don't want to lose the fact that, I mean, you come from a medical background as well, right? This isn't, you're not like,
PA, which, yeah. So the PA, the physician assistant role, started in the Navy, actually. And this was 40, 45, 50 years ago. A lot of the corpsmen were like, trying to figure out, they were the most highly trained medical professionals, period. Like they were just the most badass. They could drop tubes, and they could, set fractures, and then deal with penetrating blast trauma. And so then their whole this physician assistant sort of profession sort of blossomed from your branch. And yeah, so I've been a PA for 21 years. And so the medical, you're right, the medical component and the data-driven science behind it is also very, compelling and interesting to me.
Hey, man, that's good. So we talk about growing mushrooms. We talk about kind of just all this therapeutic stuff. And I'll be honest, like I've really found therapy through gardening myself. Like I've never had a garden, and being here in Colorado, you kind of have it like half the year. I've been loving gardening, like taking my kids out and, watering it and getting the fresh, vegetables and fruits. And David and I, we've started this mastermind group just of men, and we went on a retreat recently, and we went on a really cool hike, and we went and did a 14er. And there's something about like being out in nature, climbing mountains, doing hard things. It's just so like heart fulfilling, and I'm curious, like kind of from your experience, how that's impacted the people that you're bringing on these climbs, these summits, these retreats, and what's it all for? Like why do all these hard things and being outdoors and being in the mountains?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. Number one, I live up in Evergreen, right? So I'm surrounded by trees and woods.
Yeah,
I live at 7,300 feet, and there's elk out in the back. The rut's going on. It's super exciting right now. There's lots of things happening. Since I was itty bitty, growing up in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina and Virginia, I have always felt a connection to the greater spirit, whether it's God or whatever it is, when I'm in the woods. And I think a lot of people can relate with that. It's the place that I feel the most comfortable. It's the place where I'm the most grounded. If everything's going sideways day to day, whatever it may be, all I got to do is step out in some trees and some rocks. I'm like, oh, I'm good, man. Like I'm happy here. This is church. So there's that component. I think that, most of us, I think, anybody that I would hang out with would be like, I feel like this is my place, is in the woods with trees and rocks and big mountains. And so there's that fertile environment of being there. But then, then you start upping it into rock climbing and mountain climbing and doing things that are hard. I think that what that does is it requires every individual to go into a place of discomfort. And I think that we've gotten quite soft. I think there's a lot of soft, it's just like we've lost our edge to a certain degree as human beings globally. Like we've just gotten so pulled away from adversity. And so our adversity is when our, computer freezes up, as opposed to when a fucking saber-toothed tiger is chasing us, right? So it's like, and I think that
Right.
we crave that. We crave adversity. And there's this concept called hormesis, which I think is a really interesting thing. Hormesis is micro adversities. It's as simple as finishing your shower really cold, or doing just cold immersion, right? But like, yeah, not everyone. Like I did yesterday, but I felt like pussy. But I didn't. Usually I'll finish my shower, like I'll turn it down, freezing cold, and just be like, "Ugh." That's hormesis, right? Or
Right.
climbing mountains. I was just in Bolivia about a month ago, guiding clients on 17,000-foot peaks and over the course of 3 weeks. And every one of my clients reported after our big summit day, like that was the hardest day of their lives, and that they were just beaming. They were so fulfilled. Like that was the hardest day of my life earlier today. And they just couldn't stop smiling. Like, think about that. I just experienced the hardest physical day that I've ever had, and all I can do is smile, right? That says something to me. That's hormesis. That's suffering. And so I think we as human beings, most of us, I crave it. Like, I like to be uncomfortable. I like discomfort. And knowing that typically it may be extended, it may be weeks, but it's going to end. Like we say in the emergency rooms, like all bleeding stops. All summit nights eventually end too, right? All the missions that y'all did, they will all end at some point. If you know what I mean, they're going to end.
Right.
All bleeding stops, right? It's like, it's just knowing that the night will dawn and the sun will come up again. But knowing that in that hard window of time, from 4 to 6 a.m., when it's cold and it's dark and you're scared and it's intense, those are the best moments, man, right? Those are the best moments. You forget it when you're in there. You're so preoccupied with just like being in the pain cave, or just no, it doesn't suck. It's great. It's awesome. It's uncomfortable, but it's great. Because then the sun comes up, and then, you finish your mission, whatever it is, you summit, you get back down, and then you drink a beer and you take a shower, and, then it becomes this beautiful experience that you didn't have before. And I value those experiences. And I think that when I go with people out in the mountains, that they value that too. And I continue to see that regularly.
Dude, I love that, man. It's funny because we've been spending, I would say Stu and I have been spending a lot more time outside, especially since I've come back to Colorado, than I have. And, I've always been an outdoors guy. We are always outside, my family, but we're spending time in the mountains, and it's become, what I assume an addiction to a drug would feel like. Like, as you're talking, I'm starting to jones a little bit. Like, I'm itching. I'm like, man, I need to get out in the mountains. I just want to be there. And something you said really struck me. And I just find it very intriguing. And I think this idea of manhood, and this is something we address a lot in our master, it's the mission of our mastermind is to help men to become men again. And I think we've lost the definition, not only of adversity and what it feels like to do hard things. And, your computer froze, I'm going to freak out and throw a brick through it. Like, dude, it's not a saber-toothed tiger, right? Like you said, but the other side of it is you recapture this. I feel like you recapture this fellowship, and men are not meant to be these purely independent, solitary beings that don't have connection. We're not meant to be, and we talked about this before you hit record, but we're not meant to be tearless, emotionless beings. Like, that's not what it means to be a man. To be a man is someone who is secure with and addresses those things, and can actually share in tears and amongst brothers, and be able to have deep connections and relationship and love, heaven forbid, love amongst a bunch of dudes. And it's just this interesting twist that I feel like we need to, we're trying to address it one dude at a time, but to get out of this lie of this culture of solitude and emotionless and manhood, right? And to get out, and getting outside is just a beautiful way to like force all of that. It's force all of it. And I'll encourage you, Stu and I, with this group on the retreat, we did a mountain climb, and then at the top we jumped into a mountain lake, so you can get both of your hits on one adventure.
Yeah. Well, I hope everybody that listens to your podcast has read the book Tribe. Right, I'm sure y'all have even brought it up, or maybe
Sebastian
Younger.
Yeah,
his book Tribe is it's a short read. It's just you read it on 2 shitter sessions basically, and it's fantastic. But it talks about how we as a species, we need that. We need camaraderie. We're not supposed to be separated, and we're supposed to feel connected with other people in whatever capacity it may be. And I, you guys have young kids. My boy is 17. He just turned 17. And, I'm sure we all remember that period, like of being a 17-year-old young man trying to find your place and become a man, or a young girl, like moving into adolescence and becoming a woman. And it's a slippery slope, and it's hard to do. And I feel fortunate that, I grew up without a phone and without all that stuff. And it's even harder now for kids like him. And, he's a lacrosse player, and he's going to play in college. He's getting recruited right now. And so it's really exciting period for him. And he was supposed to go to his number 1 school Friday to basically try out a prospect camp on Saturday in Tampa at Tampa University. They won the Division II national championship this past year. And
nice.
They're a bunch of ballers, and this was his chance Saturday. Well, I don't know when your episode's going to come out, but turns out there's a big ass hurricane barreling straight into Tampa this weekend, and so the whole thing got canceled. And he's devastated. He's like, the world's conspiring against me, basically. And I'm like, no, man, no, that's not true. That's not it. And trying to recalibrate a little bit. Like, no, there's other things you got to think of. There's other variables, and they will see you play, and there's this. He's going to all these tournaments, and they're going to see you here. They're going to see you there. And oh, by the way, you just got your wisdom teeth taken out 4 days ago, and you've lost 10 pounds, and you look skinny as shit. And you need to walk in there looking like, whoa, like grow your beard out a little bit, dude, and look like a tough dude, as opposed to shaving it and like 10 pounds lighter. I'm like, this is a blessing. Don't worry about it. So anyway, all these little things that happen day to day, remind me of our need to, this whole glass half full thing is kind of what we're talking about right now. Like, I don't know, it can be kind of bullshit, because, the glass is not always half full. It's fucking empty sometimes. And it can be hard to refill it. But if it's half empty, what you got to do, you got to refill it. You got to put more in it. And you get that from these great networks of people that are together that can teach you, and you can teach them, and you learn from them and become a better human being by being around people who inspire you and open up, these doors that allow you to think in a more powerful way.
So David and I recently read a book called Coddling of the American Mind. And as we're kind of talking about this, and you're 17-year-old, and, we have young kids, and, we talk about like us being weak, right? Like we're all like so fragile these days. How do we change that? Like, how do we teach our kids to handle adversity and to be better for it? And I'm just curious, like, were you taking your son on some of these trips? Were you taking him and doing like these hard things and climbing mountains and doing, cold plunges and teaching him about like doing these hard things? And so how do we do that? Like, how do we change the culture from this like weak society and get our kids moving forward and like being tougher?
So there's a couple of answers here. And I mean, the first one is my kid, and my kid, like, climbing mountains is not something you can push someone into, right?
Right.
there's consequences with that, and you have to love it because there's consequences and it's hard.
Yeah.
So of course I introduced him to it. He climbed his first 14er when he was 5, I think, on his own 2 feet.
That's
Like
so cool.
he's been around, and he's been up in the mountains a lot. He's been doing stuff. He's been riding dirt bikes since he was 5 years old too, and all the things I love to do. But you can't push your kids. You have to let them be them, right, and figure it out. But only just continue to open them up and introduce them things. But the kid's been to Ecuador and Nepal, and he's been to Mexico like 15 times. You have a little house down in Baja on a dirty little dirt road that he has grown up on, basically. But he found his way. It's lacrosse, and he likes to bang. He likes to hit, and he likes the nature of contact sports. Cool, that's good. He's good at it. He's going to get college paid for as a result. But understanding, like, let him do him. Then to your second question, that is such a complex question and answer, and it's that coddling of America. I made a mental note to read
great
that
book.
Yeah. So I have sort of I don't know, I guess a multi-layered answer to that, because there's no easy answer to it, and there's no absolute recipe like this is how we should do it. It's just there's so many different optics for culture and life and approach towards all those things from side to side, whether it's domestically here in the States to globally. I've traveled all over the world, and I see all these different cultures and the way that men are men in different cultures. I spent some time in Mosul, Iraq. I saw those men and how they react and how they treat women, how they treat children, how they treat each other. I've been, to, almost 50 different countries. I see these different manifestations of what we consider manhood. And, all of them have a toxic component to them. All of them have a positive sort of thing that you can lean on. Like, this is good. This seems good. This is something we should really, nourish and build. And so there's really no standardization for how to do it, because I'm a big fan, like we've spoken of before, I'm a big fan of feeling emotion. I'm a big fan of talking a lot, communicating a lot, even when it feels like you're being extraordinarily vulnerable. And matter of fact, I applaud that. A lot of the courses that we've done with our veteran groups, at first everybody's like, I don't want to fucking sit around and talk, about, so I just want to go climbing. Well, okay. And then those same burly ass, big bearded tattooed dudes are like,
there's ones like crying, bawling.
Yeah. Always. Oh
Yeah.
my God, this is so good. Because why? Because you've been bottling that shit up, bro. Right. Like, because it's been sitting under there, just festering. And so we have to let that out and let that become a part of how we communicate and the dialogue that we use with each other. So there's this component of being like what some people would call soft, or being compassionate is okay. That doesn't equate to soft, but there are other facets of becoming so insulated from our natural surroundings. To me, I'll always lean on that, right? We just become so comfortable, and we choose to not step into adversity because we don't have to. And I think that, in my mind, is probably the biggest variable that can be controlled universally, globally, domestically here, is encourage men and women to step into adversity, right? And even if it's as simple as, going outside and sitting in the trees for an hour. And some people might find that uncomfortable, right? I made my kid, when he was, let's see, 17 now, when he was 14, my wife and I made him, we it's like, not a good parent. We made him go on a little bit of a vision quest and go solo camping by himself.
Oh, nice.
With our dog when he was 14. We stayed at the trailhead, and we like packed him up and sent him on his way. And it was awesome. Like, there he goes, him and the dog, like out into the woods,
Super cool.
And let him, and I recommend that. And he came back the next day, and he was like, I was very uncomfortable, you know? Yeah, it was uncomfortable. You didn't have your phone, you know, you didn't have anything to lean on other than your mind. And I think that can be uncomfortable for people. And that is good, to be in your own head, in the woods, surrounded by the natural environment, even if it's that. But I think stepping into discomfort is what we're missing. And I think that that's created in my mind, a bit of a coddled, softer version of who we can potentially be. And I'm not saying I've got all this shit figured out by any means. I'll find myself getting into these routines. I speak to companies all over the place. I'm on the road at least once a week now, it seems. And I'm on an airplane, I'm sitting in first class, I eat my meal, I go to a nice swanky hotel, I sit at the bar, I eat it good, I drink beer, I talk, and then I come home like, but then after like 2 days of that, 3 days of that, I'm like, because I feel like I'm losing like this little edge that just sort of sits there. But thankfully, that primal side of me is like, get outside, go knuckle down and like do something that reminds me that I'm still like, I still like to be uncomfortable, and I think that to me is, I'll always set my hat on that as far as where we've lost a little bit of our toughness, our edge. So it's being compassionate, being communicative, but also, getting out there and being uncomfortable, and putting yourselves in situations intentionally of discomfort.
I love that, man. Yeah,
and
it reminds me.
It's being vulnerable, right? Like,
Yeah,
being vulnerable to nature and getting out and doing hard things, and being vulnerable to communicating and opening yourself up. And there's a lot of that that's missing these days.
Yeah, because the easy way is to not.
Right.
The easy way is to not be vulnerable. The easy way is to not go outside. The easy way is to play Call of Duty and, hit an oxy and like drink a whiskey, right? Like that's the easy way. Yeah. But the easy way does not make, a solid, well-rounded individual in my mind.
That's good. Sorry, David, I cut you off.
And it reminds me, one of the most, as I was thinking about climbing this mountain with those dudes, one of the most just impactful moments for me was one of our buddies, Navy SEAL. He's out there and we climb, there's this big waterfall and we kind of able to climb the rocks, and he's standing off and he's just looking at the mountains and he's like, man, I'm just blessed. And this is a day the Lord has made. I'm with my buddies and I'm like, he was just taken it. Like I could see it. And it was so impactful to me because there's also an element of Stu and I spent a lot of time doing these things, getting out and climbing. And sometimes you enjoy the struggle, you enjoy the hard work, but sometimes you forget to just stop and look around and be like, man, this is pretty special. And it forced me to be like, okay, I need to take a moment, look around and bask in this as well. And I think, it's like you said, there's this hard and there's this, all this stuff and the vulnerable and the communication and the building and all this, but sometimes too, there's that moment where you just step back and you're like, man, this air is fresh. This is a beautiful, like I'm in the mountains, dude. And I think experiencing that again and again. And I think the jet fuel to that, what you just touched on, Jeff and Stu, you're talking about is the intentionality of who you're spending your time with and doing that with, and surround yourself with like-minded individuals that are on this same path. And I think it just propels you to a different level. Cause it's very easy also to sit, to pop an oxy, get on the video game, get networking, and you're on your headphones and doing that. But if you got a buddy that's like, hey dude, like, let's go outside, but let's go do something. And it just continues to force and push and grow. And man, so I just encourage our listeners to like, be very intentional and careful and selective at who you spend your time with, because it's going to make it's not just these little changes. It can be hugely transformative, jet fuel transformative. And I love that about it.
Good stuff, man. Yep. Hey, so I would be remiss to to not have you talk about your book, and just kind of all the other things that you're doing. If you could just give us a glimpse of your book, Climbing Through Storms.
Yeah, so it's I started writing it. It's a very doc connector for this conversation. When I'm a PA, and I do a lot of disaster medicine stuff. I work with the World Health Organization. I go on these disaster medicine deployments to Haiti, and to after the earthquake, I had Nepal after the earthquake in 2015, and then I went on a mission with the WHO, where I was the lead for a team of 8 trauma specialists, where we went and embedded with the Iraqi Special Operations Forces in Mosul as they were taking the fight to ISIS. And our allied guys were about 15 kilometers back, but we were forward with them as they were moving forward to accept their casualties. And I always say, I was only there for a month, and my experience is pale in comparison with many of your listeners and a lot of folks who have been over in places that are very volatile and uncertain. But it was for me being a civilian, it was definitely a very heady experience. ISIS found out we were there. They came after us. They started like gritting us out with RPGs, and and we had to evacuate. But more than anything, during the month that we were there, it was every day, all day, sustained penetrating and blast trauma. I mean, unbelievable every day. Those dudes were just getting like cratered every day. Because the ISOF guys were trained up. They'd been trained up by our guys, right? But the federal police guys, the Fed pole that was like sitting alongside them, those guys were not trained. And so they were just getting put through the ringer and just getting blown up. And our resources were fairly limited. So I'm trying to innovate with ketamine as opposed to rapid sequence stuff. And I just didn't have all the resources I needed. And it was a very challenging go. I got back from that. I leaned on my buddy Oz that I was telling you about. He turned me on to an acronym called VUCA, VUCA, and it stands for Volatile, Uncertain, Complex, and Ambiguous. And it's an old military term that was used back in the mid 80s where the American War College used it to prepare their soon-to-be graduates for this junk show that they were going to go operate in, how to be better when things are not going so well. And so I took the dive like I always do. And I'm like, it's really cool. And so I kind of reappropriated it a little bit. And then realizing that we're all in these VUCA environments every day. And so I wrote a book based on based on a lot of these junk shows that I've been in over the years, whether it's guiding a blind dude on Everest or doing search and rescue in a helicopter on Everest with a group of helicopter pilots and some Sherpa dudes on the ground, or being in Iraq. And so I started writing this book, and I was really into it from an academic perspective. It's not too dense. I mean, it's a pretty quick read, but I had 9 chapters written. And in January of 2020, I had 9 chapters written, and they were good. I liked them. I'm like, I can't, 9 doesn't work with me. So then March of 2020 hit. I'm like, oh, there's chapter 10 right there.
There you go.
This fucking shit show that we're all like stepping into. And so like the very beginning of the pandemic, I'm like, oh, there's chapter 10, and I wrote it all out. And so that book is a lot of my stories, but it's through the lens of, trying to be a better version of ourselves when things are just a little bit topsy-turvy or just not how we planned them, really, essentially is how it plays out.
It's good, dude. Last thing I wanted to ask you is, you talk about the Sherpa attitude and being the guide and this servant leadership mentality. How do we become better at that? How do we take this, this Sherpa attitude that you talk about?
Right. So let me just, I guess, give a cross section of who the Sherpa are.
Yeah.
Right. So I've done 14 Himalayan expeditions over the years, and all of them have been with Sherpas. And for those of you who, everybody's heard of the Sherpa before. But if you haven't seen, my buddy Nims has a documentary on Netflix called 14 Peaks. And he was a retired SBS special forces guy in the UK special Peaks was made. It's amazing if you haven't seen it. But he became a good friend of mine. He's not actually technically Sherpa. He grew up in the lowlands of Nepal, but his community is the Sherpa community. And I've become very close with these guys over the years. And they, even unintentionally, have taught me so much of what we're talking about this morning, which is, being compassionate, working hard, being selfless, being committed, being trustworthy, being communicative. And none of these things when you feel like it, not when you feel like it all the time. It isn't an on-off switch. Yeah, it's a dial. You might be able to turn it up. Maybe sometimes it comes down a little bit, but it's on. And it's who you are. It becomes your persona. It's how you operate day to day. So they've taught me so much about that, the nature of the Sherpa. And I now refer to it as the Sherpa attitude. And I teach it to people when I do all my corporate talks, and really encourage people to just look left and look right and really reflect on how you can make other people better, because anecdotally and very data-driven studies have shown that when people do think with an optic of elevating the people around them first, that engagement increases, productivity increases, creativity increases. Everybody just feels like they're a part of something that's bigger than them, and everybody becomes more engaged, and the whole team starts to move in this, as this organism that is just so much more effective. So it's one of the things I teach to people. I feel very strongly about it, and I feel it's also very important to see it as who you are, as opposed to just something you can be when it's convenient. And this goes, professionally and personally in every aspect of our lives. So the Sherpa people have taught me a lot about that, and I'm grateful to them for living that way and teaching me how to do that. And then, of course, guiding my bond buddy has been a great example of that for me. I've spent half of my life, being the eyes for this one guy and making sure he doesn't get dead, right? And doing everything I can to elevate his experience and keep him safe. And as a result, all these great things that I've experienced, just being his eyes and sort of embracing that Sherpa attitude throughout life. And then, of course, being a parent is the ultimate version of being a Sherpa, right? You're just doing all the heavy lifting for something that's not you, right? And that's what we're here for.
Yeah, man. It's good.
It's awesome, man. No, I love that. And I think if more leaders, quote unquote leaders, self-proclaimed leaders would take on that servant element, that's the first. And a servant leader, the first part is servant, right? Being good at serving, adding value to others. It's always been a firm belief, and it's always, it put my military career on a trajectory that I could have never accomplished on my own. But it's always this idea that, hey man, serve your sailors and your command will absolutely succeed. Like it's inevitable. Like you take care of them, and because they're smarter than you anyways, right? We're officers. Like they're smarter than we are anyways. So it's just, but it's never failed. And sometimes you get lost, and I've gotten lost in this self-serving, times. And I'll tell you that the remedy to selfishness and the remedy to a lot of times depression and all these things can be just to serve others. And so I love that, man. That is a awesome lesson. And obviously you embody that to the extreme, taking the blind up Mount Everest, which just doing that by yourself is a significant undertaking. So it's pretty rad, man. Appreciate your mission. Appreciate you, the book. Go get it, read it. I think the lessons in leadership, the lessons in service are critical. And dude, this has been awesome, man. It's been very, very informative. I did not know that we were going to go in the direction of mushrooms but
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I think that's the other part of it, right? You don't know
Yeah,
what you
it's
don't know.
taking care of yourself, and then being willing to explore and being open and receptive to health and growth and learning. And I think that, once you stop doing those things, you become stagnant, and then that leads into this syndrome of what we're talking about, this sort of losing your edge and losing your commitment to just being the best version of you. So always exploring, always looking around that corner, always looking for ways to be better. And I think that that's one of those modalities that people should look at and explore for sure.
Man, this has been an awesome conversation. Where do people find out more about you? Where do they get your book, and where do they learn more about your story?
Yeah, you can Climbing Through Storms. You can get on my website. Yeah, for sure you can. And that's Jeff B. Evans. JB is what a lot of people call me, Jeff B. Evans, and that's the website. And I'm on social media too. I don't do a whole lot on there anymore, but it's cool to, I was on the Rogan podcast, and after
nice.
I did Rogan, a lot of people were interested in, like, hearing little things like this. And so, I think that's when I started to be like, all right, I need to post some shit every once in a while.
Yeah, we need to get better about that as well. It's a necessary evil. But well, cool, man. Well, dude, we really appreciate you coming on. This has been a lot of fun. We need to we're in Colorado together, so we need to meet up and go do some cool stuff in the mountains.
Dude, I live in I'm right down from Red Rock, so we're probably like 10 miles away from each other.
Yeah, we live, as the crow flies, we're 12 miles from Red Rocks at our house. So yeah, we're
awesome.
Neighbors. What's up, David?
What's up, man?
Guys and gals, hey, check out Jeff. We'll put his website in the show notes. Go read a book. Check out his socials, and hey, share this if this is something that was meaningful to you. Share this podcast episode. Share Jeff's book and website, and go fill the storehouse.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you, buddy. It was awesome.
Yeah, my
friends.
pleasure.
Make it a great day.
Keep fighting the good fight. Thank y'all.
See you.
Dude, today's episode reminded me the importance of getting outside, being intentional, mindset, growth, spending time with other men, other people that make you better. Today's episode captured all that for me.
I really want to go climb a mountain right now. Not going to lie.
Right now.
Yeah. So, hey, this is the stuff that we're intentionally seeking out, right? The Storehouse Mastermind. We went on our first retreat in September in Colorado, climbing mountains, jumping into freezing cold lakes, community, fellowship, breaking bread, like all that stuff. It's so amazing. And we need it in our lives right now more than ever. Storehouse310.com/mastermind. We're opening up the next house in November 1st. House 2 is opening. Be a part of it. Like, let's get better together. Let's be better dads, husbands, leaders, friends. Let's go do it.
Thanks for listening to Filling the Storehouse. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe and share it with someone you love. And if you really felt inspired, leave a 5-star review so we could continue to grow and help other Christian entrepreneurs fill their storehouse. If you're interested in creating financial freedom through real estate investing, be sure to check out our website at storehouse310turnkey.com. We'd love to serve you through our platform of building the kingdom. Just click on the contact link and we'll reply to you as soon as we can. Again, thanks so much for listening. Now go fill your storehouse and make it a great day.